Hello everyone, and welcome back to another True Crime Mysteries video. Thank you all for being here. Today we're discussing 3 Jane or John Does whose identities have been recovered and their cold cases solved. Let's get into it. Number 1. Lady of the Dunes. On July 26, 1974, a 12-year-old girl was walking her dog in the Cape Cod Dunes in Provincetown, Massachusetts, when she came across a naked woman she thought was sunbathing. The woman was lying face down on a beach blanket, but when she got closer, she made a realization that made her blood run cold and she bolted. The police were called and they confirmed that the woman was deceased. The woman was missing her hands. Her nearly decapitated head was resting on a pair of folded jeans and a blue bandana. It was determined that she had likely been there for 2 weeks before the discovery of her body, which already gave law enforcement a disadvantage in identifying her. She would be called Lady of the Dunes and become Massachusetts' longest unidentified homicide victim. She was described as a redhead with an athletic build and medium height. Her hair had been pulled back into a ponytail and her toes were painted with pink nail polish. The thing that had led to the biggest hope of someone recognizing her was that the Jane Doe had extensive dental work with multiple gold crowns, which was estimated to have cost upwards of $5,000 at the time. It was also estimated that she was in her 30s. At the time of her discovery, there was very little for police to go on. There were 2 sets of footprints that led to her body. Her cause of death was determined to be severe blunt force trauma to the skull, and her autopsy revealed that she'd been sexually assaulted, likely post-mortem. In addition to her hands being removed, she was also missing a forearm. Detectives canvassed nearby motels, rooming houses, and thousands of missing women reports, but nothing matched. They even had a clay model reconstruction of the woman. However, despite best efforts, there could be little uncovered about the woman, and the case would ultimately go cold for many decades. Over the years, there had been many theories locally about who this mystery woman was. One of these theories was that she had worked as an extra for the movie Jaws, which had been filmed earlier that year in Martha's Vineyard, but that had never been confirmed. Several other people had come forward throughout the years, thinking that she was their missing sibling or someone they knew, but each time the identification was ruled out. Throughout the years, they exhumed her body more than once to re-examine her remains and look for new clues. Her skull was removed in order to create a new artistic rendering of what she might have looked like. In 2000, a DNA sample was collected and stored, and in 2022, the DNA was sent to Ortham Labs, world-renowned for using genetic genealogy to identify unknown individuals. On October 31, 2022, the Massachusetts State Police, with the FBI, announced that the Lady of the Dunes had been identified as Ruth Marie Terry after nearly 50 years after her body was discovered. She had been 37 years old at the time of her death.
We are standing here today to announce that after nearly a half-century of investigative efforts, we have identified the oldest unidentified homicide victim in Massachusetts, known as the Lady of the Dunes. She is Ruth Marie Terry from Tennessee, who was just 37 years old at the time of her death. The FBI identified Ruth using investigative genealogy. This is a unique method that can generate new leads for unsolved homicides, as well as help identify unknown victims. This is, without a doubt, a major break in the investigation that will, hopefully, bring all of us closer to identifying the killer.
Today, over 48 years after her murder and discovery, we can finally say her name, Ruth Marie Terry. We know Ruth had family and friends who loved her, and we are aware that this development has not been an easy one for them, so we keep them in our thoughts today during this difficult time. Certainly, during the years that they were in contact with her, they never envisioned the outcome for the child, the teenage girl, the young woman they knew, loved, and cared about. We hope today's announcement helps shed some light on the many questions they have had these many years and marks another step towards answering more of them. For many police investigators at the end of their careers, there is often an unresolved case that haunts them, that intrudes upon the days, years, and decades of the rest of their lives. This case has been that for generations of Provincetown police officers and Massachusetts state troopers.
The highest calling in this job is to give voice to the voiceless and to serve victims and their families. And it may take months, it may take years. This case, it's taken over 4 decades, but no one's stopping. And this is a very important development, but we're on to the next round. As Joe and Colonel Mason went over, we need help from the public. We welcome more information. We're determined to solve this crime.
If Ruth Marie hadn't met her assailant in 1974, she could be 86 years old today. If the person responsible for the crime was in his or her 20s or 30s, he would be in his late 60s or 70s. If he was a little older, he may well be dead, but we will assume he is not. And we will pursue every lead and every clue to bring this person to justice.
Ruth was born on September 8, 1936, in a small mining town in Tennessee. By the time she was 20, she had left home and was married for the first time. By 1957, she was divorced and working in a car manufacturing plant in Michigan. She got pregnant and had a child, but she gave the child up for adoption to a family that worked at the plant. Then she left Michigan shortly after that. The child, Richard Hanchett, put his DNA into Ancestry.com in 2018 in the hopes of finding family related to his mother. He was able to connect with some family, but also discovered that his mother had been missing since the 1970s. This was the connection that was used to identify Ruth. Sometime in 1974, Ruth went to visit family in Tennessee with a new husband, Guy Rockwell Maldovin. After this visit, Ruth's family never heard from her again. Ruth's sister-in-law, Carol Terry, is quoted as saying, "I always had a bad feeling about that guy that she had married." They'd only been married for 6 months before her body was discovered. When she had gone missing, Maldovin disappeared, never reporting his new bride missing. Ruth had been known to use several different variations of her name. Law enforcement say that she had connections to Tennessee, Michigan, and California, and they are looking for more information about her life before and up to 1974. Authorities announced shortly after Ruth was identified that they were also looking for any information about Guy Maldovin. He also used several names, was known to travel around the U.S., and was the lead suspect in the murder of his second wife and stepdaughter in 1960 in Seattle, Washington. It is strongly believed that he is responsible for Ruth's murder, the murders in Seattle, and an additional murder of an unknown victim. After he fled Washington, human remains were discovered in the septic tank of his home. He is also the lead suspect in 2 murders in June of 1950 in Humboldt, California. 28-year-old Henry Barrett was murdered, and 17-year-old Barbara Jo Kelly was dating Maldovin when she disappeared and her body was never discovered. Guy Rockwell Maldovin died at the age of 78 in 2002 in Salinas, California. Law enforcement are still working to positively identify Maldovin as the killer, though they are open to looking at other individuals. Number 2. The Bear Brook Victims. On November 10, 1985, a group of hunters discovered 2 bodies in a metal drum at the Bear Brook State Park in Allenstown, New Hampshire. Determined to be an adult female between the ages of 23 and 33, with dark curly hair and extensive dental work, and a little girl between the ages of 5 and 11 with a gap between her teeth and dark hair. The initial investigation followed every lead and ruled out several possible identities. 15 years later, in 2000, 2 more bodies were found in the same area in a similar metal drum. Authorities say that it was missed because it was likely outside the initial investigation search perimeter. The other 2 bodies were also discovered to be female, aged 2 and 4 with dark hair and an overbite, and a girl between the ages of 1 to 3 with light hair and a gap in her front teeth. The Allenstown Police Department could not identify the victims, and they would eventually be called the Bear Brook Murders or the Allenstown Four. In 2013 and 2015, different sets of composites of what the victims might have looked like were released in hopes of identifying them. In 2014, through DNA, they were able to determine that the woman and the oldest and the youngest child were related. The woman was the mother of the two children, and the fourth victim was not related to the others. In 2017, it was announced that all the bodies had been connected to serial killer Terry Petter Rasmussen. He was the biological father of the fourth unknown girl, aged 2 to 4. Unfortunately, Rasmussen died in prison in 2010 of lung cancer and could not be asked about these murders. He had been serving a life sentence for the murder of Yoon Jun. In 2019, authorities announced that they had identified the 3 related victims as Marilise Elizabeth Honeychurch, born in 1954, her daughters Marie Elizabeth Vaughn, born in 1971, and Sarah Lynn McWaters, born in 1977. They made the discovery with the help of a librarian, Rebecca Heath, who was researching the case and had come across posts on Ancestry.com looking for a long-lost half-sister named Sarah. The post dated back to as early as 1999. It wasn't until she got in touch with the family and asked if they were still looking for Sarah and if they had more information.
She was born in 1977, was born in California, and this individual was looking for her and her mother. And the more I start looking into Sarah McWaters, I find that there are family members that are looking for Sarah's mother, Marlise, and that Marlise had another daughter, Marie.
That's when the family said that all they knew was that she was last seen with her mother, sister, and a man named Rasmussen. Rebecca Heath then contacted Peter Headley, a deputy for the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department, who worked with genealogists to help identify Rasmussen. With this new information, they could use DNA to positively identify the victims. Marilise had been married twice, having a child with each husband. Marilise and her daughters were last seen on Thanksgiving in 1978 when she fought with her mother over a man that she had brought with her, and his name was Terry Rasmussen. The only other assumed sighting of Marilise was 2 signed arrest reports for Robert Evans, a known alias of Rasmussen, signed by his wife, Elizabeth Evans, in February and June of 1980. There had been no mention of the kids in the police report, and they have not found any other relation to the unknown fourth victim other than she was the daughter of Terry Rasmussen. After identifying the 3 victims, officials ruled that Rasmussen had killed all 4. They're still looking for any information on identifying the last victim, Rasmussen's daughter, and there was a new composite made in 2019 of what she might have looked like. The child was likely born around 1975 or 1976, possibly in California, Texas, or Arizona. Rasmussen is being investigated for several other murders. In 1980, 14-year-old Lauren Rand and 25-year-old Denise Denal went missing. Their bodies were never found. Both victims lived within a mile of Rasmussen's home at the time. A surviving daughter of Rasmussen also told law enforcement that she remembered having 2 siblings, but that they had died, and it is believed that Rasmussen may have murdered those children as well, or one of them may be the unidentified child. Law enforcement are still working to identifying her, and they've dubbed her the middle child and finding her maternal family. As well, they are looking to determine if Rasmussen had more victims in the areas he lived in, which include Colorado, California, Texas, Arizona, Idaho, Virginia, Ohio, Oregon, Hawaii, and New Hampshire. While in New Hampshire in 1980, a woman named Elizabeth Evans was listed as his spouse, but this woman has never been identified. Aliases he was known to have used include Robert Bob Evans, Curtis Mayo Kimball, Gordon Jensen, Larry Vanner, and Gary Mockerman. Number 3. Gacy victim number 5. The Cook County Sheriff's Office has made an announcement in regards to the remaining unknown victims of serial killer John Wayne Gacy. In October 2021, one of the victims was identified with the help of the DNA Doe Project. This victim was known as Gacy victim number 5. For those who may not know, Gacy was a prolific serial killer who tortured and killed at least 33 young men and boys between 1972 and 1978 in Chicago.
Terry, the horrible truth to suburban contractor John Gacy's rambling statements to police last week is becoming more and more evident with each passing day. 6 more bodies unearthed from the basement crawl space of Gacy's Norwood Park Township home today, bringing to 15 the number found there since Friday. Des Plaines and Cook County Sheriff's Police investigators arrived first thing this morning to resume their search. The big white wagon, which has been used to transport bodies from the northwest suburb to the morgue, Fishbein Institute, pulled up early today and stood waiting outside the house while more digging went on inside. Also on the scene, crowds of onlookers, the curious, many of whom have stood the death watch for days. By late today, just about all the hollow spaces in the house had been opened up for the searchers, floorboards and ceiling panels pried loose and carted out to the huge bin just outside the front door. Most of the attention has been centered on the 30-inch dirt crawl space, similar to one we photographed in a house near Gacy's. This is where 12 of the 13 bodies were buried. Searchers are being hindered by water, which keeps filling in their holes, a water problem which Gacy had used as an excuse to have trenches dug in the crawl space. Employees who did the actual digging said they thought drainage tiles were to be buried, not bodies.
Gacy had a total of 8 unidentified victims, and in 2011, the Cook County Sheriff's Office reopened the case in the hopes of identifying them. They partnered with the DNA Doe Project, an organization that uses DNA and genetic genealogy to identify Jane and John Does. Since 2011, they have identified 3 unidentified victims: Timothy McCoy, James Hackinson, and William Bundy. Now they have identified a 4th victim as Francis Wayne Alexander, who went by Wayne. Wayne would have been 21 or 22 at the time of his death. Originally from North Carolina, he had moved to Chicago after getting married in New York in 1975. However, the marriage only lasted 3 months and they divorced shortly after. The family never reported Wayne missing, as they had originally thought he wanted space after his divorce. The last known sighting of him was a traffic ticket that was issued on January 5, 1976 in Chicago. His remains were found in the crawl space of Gacy's home in 1978, and authorities believe he was killed between 1976 and 1977, most likely shortly after that traffic ticket, as according to records, he didn't make much income in 1976. Wayne is survived by his mother, 2 half-sisters, and 2 half-brothers. The family is also asking for their privacy at this time and does not wish to be identified, but they did prepare a statement to the media.
Our hearts are heavy. Our sympathies go to other victims' families. Our only comfort is knowing this killer no longer breathes the same air as we do.
Additionally, they have said that they were saddened by the news, but relieved to have answers and finally know what happened to him. Sheriff Dart, an investigator in this case, also said, quote, "This is the first time that we actually had a parent that was still alive in one of these cases." The Cook County Sheriff's Office is now looking towards identifying the remaining victims, known only as victim number 10, victim number 13, victim number 21, 27, and 28. All young males that would have gone missing from 1975 to 1977. Gacy was known to have abducted his victims from particular areas of Chicago, but he also lured some by promising them work or posing as a police officer, whatever it took to get them into his home. He was criminally active until his arrest in 1978. If you'd like me to cover Gacy more in depth, let me know down below in the comment section. Well, that is it for this video. As always, thank you so much for watching. If you like this content and what I do over here, please don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss my next upload. If you'd like to support this channel, you could always give the video a like. If you want me to make more content like this, it is the easiest and cheapest way to support the channel. We also have channel membership as well as Patreon if you want to get more behind the scenes content, exclusive content, or just to support the channel. In the description box of this video, you also find links to all my socials to connect with me as well as other goodies. But that is it for me. Thank you so much for being here. I will see you all in the next one. Bye for now.